Emotions, they're powerful, unpredictable, and often seem to control us more than we control them. Have you ever found yourself reacting to a situation so intensely that you wonder where that reaction came from? Maybe it's a feeling of anger, fear, or even overwhelming sadness that emerges at the most unexpected moments. It's as though these emotions are pulling the strings, and we're simply along for the ride. But what if I told you that those emotional reactions aren't random? What if they're tied to something deeper, something that's been there, hidden beneath the surface for years? The truth is, emotions often arise from unresolved issues, particularly from our past, most commonly from our childhood. Think about it for a moment. What if your anger isn't just about the situation at hand? What if it's rooted in something from long ago? Something you didn't even realize was still affecting you today? This is the first step in understanding your emotional triggers. These are the moments, the actions, the words that push us into reactions without us consciously choosing them. They're like hidden switches, triggered without warning, controlling how we respond to the world around us. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I can't change how I feel in the moment. It just happens. That's because emotions can be like powerful waves, crashing into us from nowhere. But here's where the real power lies: awareness. Once we become aware of these emotional triggers, we gain control over them. It's like uncovering a secret about yourself. Suddenly, you can see the patterns that were always there. The way certain situations or words set you off. The way your body tightens when something feels familiar, even if you don't consciously understand why. But here's the most important thing to understand. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean eliminating them. It means acknowledging them, seeing them for what they really are. Emotions are not demands, they're messages. They are signals from our past, from our unconscious mind, trying to communicate something to us. They tell us where we've been hurt, where we've been wronged, and where we might still be holding onto pain or fear. But once we see these emotions for what they truly are, we stop being controlled by them. This is where emotional neutrality comes in. Instead of reacting without thinking, we respond with awareness. We don't suppress or ignore our emotions, but we don't let them control us either. By becoming conscious of our emotional triggers, we take the first step toward emotional freedom. And trust me, this is a journey that can lead to greater peace, clarity, and self-understanding. But it begins with one powerful act: paying attention to the emotions you experience and asking yourself, where is this coming from? Now, imagine how your life could change if you could master this process. What if, instead of being controlled by your emotions, you became the one in control? Wouldn't that feel like freedom? So, let's take this journey together and learn how to understand the emotional triggers that shape our lives. Have you ever noticed how your body reacts before your mind even catches up? You're sitting at your desk, feeling fine, and then suddenly, your shoulders tighten, your chest feels constricted, and your breath becomes shallow. Before you even have time to understand why, you're already in a heightened emotional state. This isn't coincidence. It's your body's alarm system going off, a signal that something inside is shifting. Even if your mind hasn't yet caught up, the body is like a living, breathing radar for emotions, constantly processing feelings before they fully surface in your mind. It's like a warning light on the dashboard of your car, blinking red and flashing in ways that demand your attention. But most of the time, we ignore it. We push through the tension, the discomfort, the tightness, not realizing that these physical cues are an early warning system, a built-in tool we can use to our advantage. The Stoics understood this very well. They weren't just about philosophical ideas or lofty teachings. They were masters of self-observation. They believed in tuning into their bodies, observing their reactions, and understanding how their physical states were linked to their emotional worlds. It's one thing to think about your emotions, but it's a whole other thing to feel them. To understand how your body gives you clues about what's happening beneath the surface. For example, when we're under stress, it shows. Our bodies stiffen, our muscles tighten, and we begin to feel physically uncomfortable. That tightness in your shoulders, the sudden headache, the clenched jaw, these are all signals that your body is in emotional overload. But if you're aware of these signs, you can act before the storm hits. You can pause, take a deep breath, and recognize the feeling rising within you, instead of letting it dictate your behavior. The truth is, this awareness gives you power. The power to intervene in your emotional reactions before they spiral. Imagine being in the middle of a heated argument or a stressful situation, and you feel your body begin to react, the tension creeping in. Instead of letting it take over, you can stop. You can notice your body's signal and use it as a prompt to reset, to breathe, to ground yourself. It's like having a moment of clarity in the chaos, where you can make a conscious decision not to let the emotion control you. I'll tell you this from my own experience. Learning to tune into my body has been a game changer. Before, I used to get caught up in my emotions, letting them run wild without even noticing. But when I began paying attention to my physical state, when I started noticing that subtle tension or shallow breath, I was able to act differently. I could catch myself before things escalated, before my emotional reactions became impulsive decisions I'd regret later. And that awareness didn't just stop with difficult emotions. It transformed how I responded to every situation in life. By practicing this kind of observation, by becoming aware of your body's emotional alarm system, you gain control over your reactions. It's like giving yourself a pause button. Instead of getting swept away by emotions, you step back, breathe, and choose how to respond. And that is how we begin to master not just our emotions, but ourselves. The body doesn't lie, it speaks to us. And if we listen, it can help guide us through even the most challenging emotional storms. There's a moment in every emotional encounter where everything could change. It's the space between stimulus and reaction, a critical gap where true freedom lies. Most of the time, we don't even notice this gap. Something happens, an angry comment, a stressful situation, a challenging person, and our immediate reaction kicks in. Before we even have a chance to think, we're already in motion, letting our emotions dictate our behavior. But what if, just for a second, we stopped? What if we created space right before we reacted? This is what I call the sacred pause, that brief moment where everything hangs in the balance, where we have the power to choose our response. It's not just about holding back or biting our tongue. It's about consciously deciding how we want to respond, from a place of intention, not impulse. And this, my friends, is where freedom lives. In that space, we get to decide who we want to be in that moment, how we want to show up. It's the space where our wisdom can rise, where clarity can emerge, and where we can act with purpose. The Stoics, who mastered the art of emotional control, knew this well. They didn't believe in controlling external events because, frankly, that's impossible. Life will always throw curveballs at us, difficult people, unexpected challenges, frustrations we can't control. But the Stoics taught us that we have complete control over how we judge these events, how we interpret them, and how we react to them. The judgment is where we can gain power. Instead of reacting instinctively, we pause. We give ourselves that sacred moment to see things clearly, to find the most wise and deliberate response, rather than falling into automatic patterns of reactivity. I can tell you from experience, this isn't easy at first. When you've spent your life reacting, when your emotional reflexes are well established, it feels almost impossible to create that pause. In the heat of the moment, your mind races, your body tenses, and it's like the floodgates open. The urge to act impulsively is overwhelming. But here's the thing. I've learned that the more you practice, the easier it gets. The sacred pause doesn't have to be long. Sometimes, it's just a breath, a moment where you step back and give yourself the gift of space. With time, it becomes automatic, like a second nature. That moment between stimulus and reaction becomes a muscle you can strengthen. And the benefits, they're profound. The more you create this pause, the more you begin to respond with clarity, with intention, and with wisdom. You stop acting out of anger, frustration, or fear, and instead, you begin to respond with thoughtful consideration. It's not about suppressing emotions or denying them. It's about using them as information, without letting them control your actions. Over time, you'll start noticing a shift. You'll begin to feel less reactive and more in control, less at the mercy of your emotions, and more aligned with your higher self. So, practice the sacred pause. It's a small, simple act, but it holds immense power. It's the space where your true freedom begins. Mindfulness is often misunderstood as something you do only during meditation, something that requires quiet time, a perfect environment, and stillness. But the truth is, mindfulness is not a special activity, it's a way of living. It's about being present, fully engaged in whatever you're doing, no matter how mundane or routine. The Stoics, though they didn't use the modern term, mindfulness, practiced it in their own way, embracing presence in every moment. For them, every action, whether eating, walking, or conversing, was an opportunity to be fully aware, to be intentional, and to maintain control over their emotions. Now, I'm not going to lie, living this way can be challenging. Especially in our fast-paced world, we're constantly multitasking, checking our phones, worrying about what's next. It's easy to lose touch with the present moment, but that's exactly where mindfulness becomes a game changer. It helps us catch ourselves before we're swept away by our emotions. By staying present, we become aware of our thoughts and feelings before they spiral out of control. We can observe our reactions with clarity, instead of just reacting on autopilot. I'll share an example from my own life. There was a time when I found myself getting frustrated easily. A miscommunication, a delay, a small inconvenience. It didn't take much to throw me off balance. But when I started practicing mindfulness, I noticed something incredible. I became more aware of my emotional triggers. I noticed that the moment I felt a rush of frustration, my breath would shorten, my muscles would tense, and my thoughts would race. That awareness gave me a choice. Instead of reacting immediately, I could take a step back, breathe, and choose how I wanted to respond. It's not that these emotions don't come up, they do. But the difference is, instead of being controlled by them, I've learned to navigate them. Mindfulness doesn't ask us to suppress our feelings or pretend we're not affected. It simply asks us to acknowledge them, to be aware of them, and to decide how we want to show up. The Stoics were masters at this. They didn't wait for the perfect moment to practice presence. They practiced it in every moment. For them, it wasn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It was about learning how to remain calm and composed while the storm raged on. And here's the key. Practicing mindfulness isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about noticing when your mind wanders, when you're no longer present in the moment, and gently guiding it back. Over time, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You start to respond with calm, even when things get chaotic. You begin to observe your emotions without judgment, and in that space, you find the freedom to choose your response. I'll be honest, it's a journey. It takes time and patience, and it won't always be easy. But the rewards are worth it. When you practice mindfulness in daily life, you gain a deeper understanding of yourself, a greater sense of peace, and a more balanced way of engaging with the world around you. You stop being a passenger in your own life, and start taking the wheel. And trust me, that's where the magic happens. The journey to wisdom begins with one simple but profound act: knowing yourself. It sounds easy, right? We all think we know who we are. But deep self-awareness is not just about acknowledging the surface-level traits we recognize in ourselves. It's about diving into the deeper layers, the thoughts, emotions, and reactions that often go unnoticed. This kind of self-awareness doesn't happen by accident. It takes conscious effort, and it's a practice that requires patience, vulnerability, and, most of all, courage. You see, it's one thing to say, "I know how I react to stress," or "I know I get defensive when I'm criticized." But it's another thing entirely to observe those reactions in real time, without judgment about why we feel that way, and without judgment about how we might be wrong. Self-awareness is the ability to step back and look at ourselves from the outside, as if we were observing another person. It's about noticing the automatic patterns in our thoughts and behaviors, those knee-jerk reactions we take for granted and never question. I'll tell you from my own experience, when I first started this practice, it was eye-opening. I thought I knew myself well, but as I began to pay attention to my emotions, I realized just how many unconscious reactions I had. For example, when I felt criticized, my immediate thought would be, "Why are they attacking me?" But as I observed my own thoughts, I began to see that this reaction wasn't based on the actual situation. It was rooted in insecurities and old fears. I hadn't realized that until I started observing myself with curiosity, instead of judgment. That was when the real work began. This kind of self-awareness isn't about beating yourself up over flaws or mistakes. It's about observing them without attaching shame or guilt. When you look at your imperfections without judgment, you can begin to understand why they exist in the first place. Maybe it's an old wound, an unhealed experience, or simply a learned behavior that no longer serves you. By identifying these triggers, you give yourself the chance to address them consciously, rather than being controlled by them. But deep self-awareness isn't just about observing. It's about taking responsibility for your growth. Once you recognize your patterns, you have a choice. You can either continue to react the same way, letting your emotions control you, or you can choose to respond with intention. It's about seeing those imperfections, facing them head-on, and developing the courage to refine them over time. The truth is, we'll never be perfect. None of us are. But through self-awareness, we begin to uncover the parts of ourselves that need healing, that need refinement, and that need growth. This isn't a one-time fix, it's a lifelong journey. And while the road may be difficult, the more we practice, the more clarity we gain. With every moment of observation, we gain more wisdom, more understanding of ourselves, and more power to navigate the complexities of life with calm and confidence. So, take a moment today, just one moment, and look at yourself without judgment. Notice your thoughts, your reactions, and your feelings. Don't rush to change them. Just observe. In that space of awareness, you'll begin to find the clarity you've been searching for all along. When it comes to our emotions, the first and most important step is to label them. We often experience powerful feelings, anger, fear, sadness, joy. But how many times have you felt an intense emotion without fully understanding what it is? You might feel something swelling inside of you, but you can't put a name to it, and suddenly, it takes over. This is where labeling becomes the key to emotional mastery. By simply acknowledging and naming what we're feeling, we gain the power to control it, rather than letting it control us. Let me be clear. Labeling your emotions doesn't mean you have to love them or even enjoy them. You don't have to suppress them or pretend they're not there. Instead, you simply acknowledge their presence. You say to yourself, I am feeling angry, or I am feeling anxious, or I am feeling frustrated. This simple act of naming what you feel is like holding up a mirror to your emotions. It brings them into the light, where they no longer have power over you. It's like taking the first step in disarming them. I know this from personal experience. There was a time in my life when I would bury my emotions, especially the uncomfortable ones. I'd push them down, pretending they weren't there, thinking if I ignored them long enough, they'd just go away. But guess what? They didn't. In fact, they only grew stronger, manifesting in unhealthy ways: stress, frustration, and even physical tension. When I learned to label my emotions, everything changed. Instead of suppressing them, I started to name them, and in doing so, I began to take back control. I realized that acknowledging my feelings didn't make me weak, it made me stronger. It gave me the clarity to choose how to respond, instead of reacting impulsively. The Stoics knew this. They didn't believe in suppressing their emotions or pretending they didn't feel anything. They understood that emotions are part of being human, and they were clear on one thing: it's not about the emotion itself. It's about how we respond to it. When a Stoic felt anger or frustration, they didn't deny it, they acknowledged it, then chose how to respond, based on reason and virtue, not impulse. They understood that emotions, in and of themselves, are neither good nor bad. They're simply signals. The key is in how we process them. By accepting our emotions without judgment, we free ourselves from the weight they carry. Emotions don't have to define us. Just because you're feeling angry doesn't mean you are an angry person. Just because you feel sad doesn't mean you are forever sad. Emotions are temporary states. They rise, they fall, and they pass. When we accept them without letting them define us, we can process them with greater ease. We can feel the anger or frustration, but we don't have to let it consume us. We can feel the joy, but we don't have to cling to it. I'll be honest, this practice of labeling and accepting emotions can be challenging. It requires vulnerability. It requires honesty with yourself. But once you start, it becomes easier. You begin to feel more at peace with yourself, knowing that your emotions are part of the human experience, not something to be feared or avoided. When you label your emotions and accept them without judgment, you step into your own power. You reclaim control over your emotional life, and that's when true emotional mastery begins. Our minds are powerful storytellers. The narratives we construct around our experiences shape how we feel, how we behave, and ultimately, how we live. The stories we tell ourselves, about others, and about the world around us, create the emotional realities we inhabit. And yet, how many of these stories are negative? How often do we automatically assume the worst, creating scenarios in our minds that have yet to happen? This is where reframing negative thoughts becomes crucial. When we shift the way we interpret events, we shift the very foundation of our emotional experiences. The Stoics understood this better than most. They taught that the events of our lives are, in essence, neutral, It's not the circumstances themselves that cause us distress, but rather the way we interpret and respond to them. Imagine for a moment that you receive criticism at work. Your immediate thought might be, "I'm not good enough, I've failed." But that interpretation is just one perspective. What if you reframed that thought? What if you told yourself, "This is an opportunity for growth. There's something here I can learn." The event, the criticism, is the same. But the interpretation, the story you tell yourself, is completely different. And in that shift, everything changes. I've personally had moments where I allowed negative thoughts to take over. There were times when I'd face a setback, and my first instinct would be to spiral into self-doubt and frustration. "I'm not capable," I'd think. "This is too much for me." I've realized that these thoughts, though powerful, are often the product of automatic negative thinking. They're reactions, not facts. By challenging these initial thoughts, I began to break free from their grip. The key isn't to deny the emotions or push them away. It's to question them. To ask, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is it the only way to interpret this situation? By reframing these negative thoughts, I stopped seeing myself as a victim of my circumstances and began to see myself as an active participant in shaping my reality. Reframing is a conscious effort. It's not about pretending everything is perfect or ignoring your emotions. It's about recognizing that your first interpretation is not the final word. For instance, if you're feeling rejected or overlooked, instead of immediately thinking, "I'm not worthy," ask yourself, "What can I learn from this? What could I do differently next time?" This simple shift in thinking doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you approach the world. This practice is powerful because it gives us control over our mental narratives. When we allow ourselves to be caught in a cycle of negative thoughts, we limit ourselves. We keep ourselves stuck in self-imposed limitations. But when we reframe those thoughts, we open ourselves to new possibilities. We break free from the chains of our own negative interpretations. It's like changing the lens through which we view the world. Suddenly, things aren't as bleak. Challenges become opportunities. Setbacks become lessons. Mistakes become stepping stones. I won't pretend that reframing is always easy. It takes time and practice. But it is a practice that, once ingrained, can radically shift how we experience life. By questioning our automatic reactions and consciously choosing more empowering perspectives, we stop being controlled by our thoughts and start taking control of them. And in doing so, we reclaim the power to live more fully, more freely, and more confidently. Empathy and compassion are often seen as soft, gentle qualities, something that requires you to be vulnerable and open. But what if I told you that they're actually forms of strength? True strength doesn't come from shutting people out or becoming hardened to the world's suffering. It comes from understanding others, from feeling their pain, and offering them kindness even when it's difficult. When you truly empathize with someone, you're not just acknowledging their struggles, you're stepping into their shoes, understanding their perspective, and responding with compassion. That's not a weakness. It's one of the most powerful things you can do as a human being. It opens the door to connection, to healing, and to personal growth. I've learned this lesson the hard way. There was a time when I was quick to judge others, to dismiss their struggles because I hadn't experienced them myself. I thought I understood what people were going through, but I was blind to the complexity of their pain. I didn't know how to truly listen or offer support without making it about me. But when I began practicing empathy, taking the time to really understand and feel what others were going through, I saw the world differently. Suddenly, I wasn't so quick to judge. I could see the layers of struggle beneath the surface, the hidden battles that others were fighting. And it wasn't just about feeling sorry for them. It was about connecting with them, offering patience, and extending a hand instead of a harsh word. The same applies to ourselves. Self-compassion is one of the most transformative practices you can develop. How often do we treat ourselves with kindness when we fail or fall short? We beat ourselves up, we dwell on our mistakes, and we convince ourselves that we're not enough. But self-compassion is the antidote to that toxic self-talk. It's the practice of accepting our flaws, our imperfections, and our mistakes without shame. It's about understanding that we are human, that we will stumble, but that doesn't make us less worthy. Instead of criticizing ourselves for our shortcomings, we offer ourselves the same compassion we would offer a friend in need. The Stoics understood this deep truth. They believed that embracing our humanity, our flaws, our weaknesses, our imperfections, is the key to true growth. They didn't view vulnerability as something to be ashamed of. They saw it as a powerful aspect of our nature. In fact, it was through embracing their flaws and limitations that they became resilient. They learned that we don't have to be perfect to be strong. Strength comes not from hiding our weaknesses but from facing them with courage, from accepting them and learning from them. This is a practice that has been incredibly freeing for me. The more I've practiced empathy toward others and self-compassion toward myself, the more connected I feel to the world around me. It's like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I no longer have to be perfect, and neither does anyone else. Instead, we can all embrace our shared humanity, with all its messiness and beauty. In doing so, we become more resilient, more patient, and more understanding. Compassion, in all its forms, is not a weakness. It is the very strength that allows us to grow, to heal, and to connect on a deeper level. And that's something worth cultivating every single day. The ultimate freedom we can experience doesn't lie in the external world. It lies in how we choose to respond to it. Think about that for a moment. Every day, we are bombarded with events, situations, and interactions that we can't control. We don't have control over the weather, over traffic, over how other people treat us. We certainly don't have control over life's unpredictability. But what we do have control over, the one thing we can always govern, is how we respond to it. This is where true power resides, in taking full responsibility for our reactions. It's easy to fall into the trap of blaming the world, blaming others, blaming circumstances for how we feel. I know because I've been there. For a long time, I allowed external factors to dictate my emotions. I'd get upset over something someone said, or frustrated over plans that went awry. I blamed my environment, my situation, even other people for how I was feeling. It wasn't until I realized that this was a choice I was making, that my responses were completely under my control, that everything started to shift. The Stoics knew this all too well. They taught that while we can't control the events of our lives, we can always control our judgments about those events. It's in our judgment of a situation where we find our power. If someone cuts us off in traffic, we can choose to see it as an injustice and let that anger consume us. Or we can choose to let it go, to remain calm and composed. It's not about suppressing our emotions. It's about owning our reactions and choosing to respond in a way that aligns with our values. The Stoics believed that by controlling our reactions, we regain control over our lives and our inner peace. I've had moments in my life when I felt completely overwhelmed by circumstances. It's easy to think, this situation is making me upset, or this person is the reason I feel angry or hurt. But here's the thing. These thoughts are misleading. No one has the power to make us feel anything without our consent. Our emotions, as powerful as they are shaped by how we interpret the world around us. When I started taking responsibility for my reactions, I noticed a profound shift. I stopped giving away my power to external circumstances. Instead of blaming the world for how I felt, I became the one in charge of my emotional state. This doesn't mean that life won't be difficult at times or that challenges won't arise. Of course, they will, but by taking responsibility for how we respond, we reclaim our peace. We stop allowing the world to dictate our mood. When we own our reactions, we stop feeling like victims of our circumstances and instead feel empowered to choose how we engage with the world. The beauty of this practice is that it brings us peace. When we take responsibility for our reactions, we no longer feel like we're at the mercy of life's unpredictable nature. We stop feeling helpless in the face of stress, frustration, and challenges. Instead, we become the calm in the storm, the steady hand guiding us through turbulent waters. This is the power of taking responsibility for our reactions. It's not about ignoring our feelings. It's about acknowledging them and choosing to respond in a way that serves us, rather than reacts impulsively. When we do this, we find that the world has far less power over us than we once believed. Ego, pride, and grudges, they weigh us down in ways we often don't fully realize. We carry them around like invisible burdens, allowing them to influence our every decision, our interactions, and our emotions. The ego tells us we're right, even when we're wrong. Pride convinces us that we're superior, that we deserve special treatment, that we should never be the first to apologize. Grudges keep us anchored to past wrongs, fueling resentment that chips away at our peace. But here's the truth. Holding on to these things doesn't make us stronger. It only makes us prisoners of our own emotional baggage. True strength, real freedom, comes when we release these weights and choose to live without the constant need for validation or the desire to hold onto past offenses. I know firsthand how much of a toll ego, pride, and grudges can take on a person. There was a time in my life when I allowed my pride to dictate my actions. I refused to apologize, even when I knew I was in the wrong, because I felt that admitting fault would make me weak. I carried grudges like trophies, memories of past offenses that I allowed to define how I saw others. Every time I thought about those wrongs, the resentment would bubble up inside of me, and I would feel justified in my anger. I convinced myself that holding on to these feelings made me strong, that I was protecting myself from being hurt again. But the truth is, all it did was poison my mind and heart, and it kept me from moving forward. The Stoics understood this profound truth. They knew that forgiveness wasn't about excusing wrongdoings or pretending that everything was okay. It was about freeing themselves from the poison of resentment. Holding on to anger, bitterness, or grudges doesn't punish the person who wronged you, it punishes you. It keeps you tethered to the past, stuck in a cycle of hurt and emotional turmoil. Forgiveness, on the other hand, releases you from that cycle. It doesn't mean you forget the wrong that was done, but it means you stop letting it control you. Stop letting it define your present and future. I've come to realize that releasing ego, pride, and grudges is an act of self-liberation. When we let go of the need to be right, we open ourselves up to growth. When we let go of pride, we free ourselves from the pressure of living up to an image we've created. And we start embracing who we truly are. And when we release grudges, we make space for peace, healing, and new possibilities. It's not always easy. There are times when our ego wants to fight for dominance, when pride makes us hold our ground even when it's not worth it, and when past hurts resurface to remind us of the pain we've carried. But each time we choose to let go, we become lighter. We reclaim our power, not through holding on to anger, but through releasing it. The true strength of forgiveness lies not in excusing others, but in reclaiming our peace. By letting go of the things that no longer serve us, we free ourselves to live authentically and to connect with others in a deeper, more meaningful way. Ego, pride, and grudges only hold us back. They keep us trapped in a story we no longer need to tell. The moment we choose to release them, we step into a new chapter of our lives, one where we are free to be who we truly are, without the weight of the past dragging us down. And that's where real strength lies. Setting healthy boundaries isn't just a practice, it's a necessity for maintaining our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. So many of us go through life without even realizing that we're allowing others to overstep, to drain our energy, or to disrespect our time. We often believe that being kind, being accommodating, or always saying yes makes us a good person. But the reality is that when we don't establish boundaries, we end up losing ourselves in the process. Boundaries are not walls. They are agreements we set with ourselves about how we want to be treated and what we are willing to tolerate. They are the lines that protect our peace, our energy, and our dignity. I've learned this the hard way. There was a time when I struggled with setting boundaries. I didn't want to disappoint anyone, so I overcommitted. I gave my time and energy away without considering the impact it was having on me. And as a result, I found myself burned out, frustrated, and resentful. I was constantly saying yes to others while saying no to myself. It wasn't until I hit a breaking point that I realized I needed to start setting boundaries. Not just for my own well-being, but for the health of my relationships as well. The Stoics may not have explicitly discussed boundaries as we understand them today, but they certainly understood the importance of guarding one's inner life. They spoke often about the need to protect our thoughts, to control our responses, and to stay true to our values. In many ways, setting boundaries is an extension of that practice. When we set boundaries, we are protecting our inner world from being overwhelmed by the demands of the outer world. We are telling others that we respect ourselves enough to guard our time, our energy, and our peace. It's easy to think that setting boundaries will make us seem selfish or unkind. But in reality, boundaries are the foundation of healthy relationships. When we set clear limits, we show others how to treat us with respect. We demonstrate that we value ourselves, and in turn, we encourage others to value us as well. And when we honor our own boundaries, we can give more authentically to others. By saying no to the things that drain us, we create space to say yes to the things that truly matter, whether that's time for ourselves, time for loved ones, or the energy to pursue our passions. Setting boundaries isn't always easy. It requires courage, especially when we fear disappointing others or causing conflict. But each time we choose to honor our boundaries, we reclaim a little more of our peace. We stop giving our energy to things and people that don't align with our values, and we begin to focus on what truly nourishes us. Over time, this practice becomes more natural. It becomes a way of life, and the more we honor our boundaries, the more we create relationships that are built on mutual respect, understanding, and authenticity. In my own life, setting boundaries has transformed the way I interact with others. It's allowed me to be more present, more focused, and more intentional in everything I do. I no longer feel overwhelmed by the demands of others because I've learned to protect my time and energy. I've learned that I don't have to say yes to everything in order to be loved or accepted. I've learned that by setting boundaries, I actually invite more genuine connections into my life. Relationships that are built on respect, trust, and balance. So, if you're struggling with setting boundaries, remember this: you have the right to protect your peace, your time, and your energy. Setting boundaries isn't about pushing people away. It's about inviting more of the things that truly matter into your life. It's about honoring yourself enough to say no to what doesn't serve you, so you can say yes to what does. Stress and anxiety are part of being human. They arise in response to the pressures we face in life, whether from work, relationships, or personal challenges. At times, they can feel overwhelming, leaving us trapped in a cycle of worry and tension. But here's the truth: Stress and anxiety don't have to control us. They are natural responses, but they are also temporary. The real power lies in how we manage them. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't deny the existence of stress or pain. They simply refused to let it dictate their lives. Instead, they cultivated resilience and emotional balance, teaching us that we can face life's challenges with steadiness and clarity. I can't count the number of times I've found myself tangled in the web of stress and anxiety, especially when faced with uncertain situations. There were moments when the weight of everything felt like too much to bear, when the pressure seemed to crush me under its force. But through trial and error, I've learned that while I can't always control the circumstances around me, I do have control over how I respond to them. Stress and anxiety may come, but how I handle them is entirely up to me. One of the most effective tools I've discovered in managing stress is mindful breathing. It's such a simple practice, yet so powerful. When I'm feeling overwhelmed, I take a moment to pause and focus on my breath. I breathe in deeply, hold it for a few seconds, and then exhale slowly. It sounds so basic, but it has an incredible calming effect. This isn't just about slowing down, it's about grounding myself in the present moment, shifting my focus from the chaotic thoughts racing through my mind to something simple and calming. By doing this, I create a space between myself and the stress, allowing me to respond with clarity rather than react impulsively. Physical movement is another essential tool in managing stress. There's something therapeutic about getting out of my head and into my body. Whether it's a quick walk, some yoga, or even a few minutes of stretching, moving my body helps release tension and clears my mind. Exercise triggers the release of endorphins, our body's natural stress relievers, and it's amazing how even a short burst of movement can shift my mindset and relieve stress. The Stoics weren't unfamiliar with physical exertion either. They believed that a strong body supports a strong mind, and in my own experience, I've found that physical activity doesn't just benefit my health, it's essential for my mental well-being. Reframing thoughts has also played a pivotal role in managing my anxiety. It's so easy to get trapped in negative thought patterns when stress hits. The what-ifs start piling up, and before long, I'm imagining worst-case scenarios. But I've learned that I don't have to follow that path. Reframing my thoughts allows me to challenge those negative spirals and replace them with more constructive perspectives. When I start thinking, what if I fail? I remind myself, what if this is an opportunity to learn and grow? Shifting my thoughts in this way doesn't eliminate the anxiety, but it changes my relationship with it. Instead of being consumed by fear, I begin to see stress as something I can handle, not something that handles me. Finally, seeking support is vital. I've come to realize that I don't have to face everything on my own. Whether it's talking to a friend, a mentor, or a therapist, reaching out for support helps me process my feelings and gain perspective. It's easy to feel isolated when we're struggling, but the truth is, most of us are navigating similar challenges. Sharing our experiences and leaning on others for support helps ease the burden of stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety are inevitable parts of life, but we don't have to let them define us. By practicing mindful breathing, moving our bodies, reframing our thoughts, and seeking support, we can manage these emotions and face life's challenges with a sense of steadiness. The Stoics believed in the power of resilience, and through these tools, we can build that same resilience within ourselves, navigating the storms of life with clarity, balance, and strength. Perfection is something we all chase, but it's ultimately a mirage. It's an illusion that makes us believe there's an ideal version of ourselves waiting to be achieved. A state of flawless existence that we can somehow reach if we just try hard enough. But the reality is that perfection doesn't exist, and the pursuit of it only leads to frustration and disappointment. The Stoics understood this well. They recognized that growth is not about reaching a final, perfect destination. It's about the journey itself, with all its mistakes, setbacks, and missteps. Each flaw, each failure, is part of the process, and through embracing imperfection, we allow ourselves to grow into who we're meant to be. I used to struggle with this idea a lot. I spent so much time trying to be perfect, trying to meet every expectation, and measuring my worth by how close I came to some unattainable standard. But what I've come to realize, and what I've learned through my own experiences, is that perfection only holds us back. It's a constant pressure, an invisible weight that keeps us from moving forward. We avoid taking risks, we delay actions, and we limit ourselves out of fear that we won't measure up. I know I've done it. I've waited until the perfect moment to start something, only to find that by the time I was ready, that moment had passed. I've hesitated to speak up, to make decisions, or to be vulnerable, thinking that I had to have it all figured out first. But the truth is, none of us ever have it all figured out, and that's okay. The Stoics taught that growth is a continuous process, and it's a process that involves trial and error. They didn't expect themselves to be perfect, nor did they demand perfection from others. Instead, they focused on improving each day, learning from their mistakes, and accepting that they would never be free from imperfection. This doesn't mean resigning ourselves to failure or mediocrity. It means understanding that failure isn't the end. It's a stepping stone. It's part of becoming better, stronger, and wiser. Our mistakes don't define us, they refine us. Embracing imperfection is about giving ourselves permission to be human. It's about acknowledging that we will stumble, we will fall short, and we will face setbacks. And in those moments, instead of criticizing ourselves or feeling defeated, we practice self-compassion. We look at our flaws and mistakes with understanding, not judgment. We remind ourselves that we're doing the best we can with what we have. And that's enough. This is something I've learned to apply more in my own life. When I make a mistake now, I don't beat myself up over it like I used to. Instead, I take a step back, reflect on what I can learn, and move forward with the knowledge that I'm a work in progress. The beauty of embracing imperfection is that it frees us from the burden of constantly needing to be perfect. It allows us to take risks, to try new things, and to grow without the fear of failure holding us back. It gives us the space to explore, to create, and to live without the pressure of being flawless. We stop measuring ourselves against an unrealistic standard, and instead, we embrace the person we are in this moment, flaws, mistakes, and all, and in doing so, we allow ourselves to become the best version of ourselves, not by achieving perfection, but by continuously evolving and learning from our imperfections. So, let go of the need to be perfect. Embrace your flaws, your mistakes, and your setbacks. They don't make you less, they make you more. They are part of your journey, and they are what shape you into who you are meant to be. Developing a growth mindset and emotional balance is a transformative approach to life that can help us navigate even the most challenging moments with grace and strength. A growth mindset isn't just about seeing setbacks as obstacles. It's about recognizing them as opportunities to learn, grow, and evolve. When we view failure as a lesson, rather than a reflection of our worth, we free ourselves from the paralyzing fear of making mistakes. This shift in perspective is powerful. It allows us to approach every challenge, no matter how difficult, with the belief that we are capable of overcoming it and emerging stronger on the other side. For a long time, I struggled with the idea of failure. I was afraid of being wrong, of not measuring up, of letting others down. It wasn't until I embraced the concept of a growth mindset that things began to shift. I realized that failure wasn't something to fear, it was something to be welcomed. Every failure is a lesson in disguise, an opportunity to refine my approach, to gain new insights, and to try again with a greater sense of wisdom. The more I allowed myself to fail without judgment, the more I saw that it was not failure itself that hurt me. It was my refusal to embrace it. Once I shifted my mindset, I found that setbacks no longer felt like roadblocks. Instead, they became stepping stones on the path to personal growth. But a growth mindset is only part of the equation. We also need emotional balance to navigate the ups and downs of life. Emotional balance doesn't mean suppressing our feelings or trying to eliminate negative emotions altogether. It doesn't mean forcing ourselves to be happy all the time or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. Emotional balance means experiencing the full spectrum of emotions: joy, sadness, anger, fear, frustration, without allowing any one of them to overwhelm us or define us. It's about acknowledging and processing our emotions in a healthy way, rather than being controlled by them. This is something I've had to work on personally. There have been times when I've been overwhelmed by stress or frustration, letting those emotions take over and cloud my judgment. But learning emotional balance has been a game changer. I've learned to sit with my emotions, to observe them without letting them dictate my behavior. When I'm feeling anxious, I no longer push it away or try to bury it. Instead, I acknowledge it, explore where it's coming from, and then choose how I want to respond. Emotional balance allows me to feel deeply without being consumed by those feelings. The Stoics were masters of emotional balance. They didn't shy away from difficult emotions, but they understood the importance of resilience and adaptability. They practiced mindfulness, staying grounded in the present moment while being fully aware of their emotions. They believed that no matter what life threw their way, it was always an opportunity to grow. In the face of adversity, they focused on what was within their control, how they responded, how they thought, how they carried themselves. They were resilient in the face of hardship because they knew that every challenge was an invitation to become a better version of themselves. This is a lesson we can all take to heart. Life will never be without challenges, setbacks, or difficult emotions, but with a growth mindset and emotional balance, we can face anything with resilience. We can turn failures into lessons, embrace our emotions without being controlled by them, and keep moving forward, no matter what. The key is to cultivate this mindset every day, to embrace growth, and to never stop striving to improve. So, the next time you face a challenge, remember this: you are capable of growing through it. You are capable of learning from it. And most importantly, you are capable of staying emotionally balanced. No matter what, embrace the full spectrum of your emotions, and approach life's setbacks with a mindset that says, I will learn, I will grow, and I will continue to become better. Let this be the mindset that drives you forward, today and every day.